Have you ever noticed that sometimes you feel deeply inspired, you feel energy moving through you, you feel clarity, excitement, desire, and yet somehow nothing actually changes? You start something, you feel the impulse, you imagine a new version of your life, but days later the energy disappears, the inspiration fades, and you find yourself back in the same patterns again. If that sounds familiar to you, this week's tantric teaching might explain why and how you can do something about it. David, William, Pearce. And one of the reasons I fell in love with Tantra is because these teachings corresponded with my lived experience of reality. They helped me understand things I could already feel but hadn't yet heard articulated clearly before. And my intention with these transmissions is simply to pass that understanding forward, so that maybe you feel a little more seen, a little more understood, and a little more supported in your own experience of life. This week's teaching is on what Tantra calls Jnana Shakti, the power of knowing. Last week's teaching explored Iksha Shakti, the power of will, the raw impulse of consciousness towards expression, the desire to create, to move, to become, to express. And this week's teaching reveals something important. Will alone is not enough. Because if the inspirational energy of will is not fused with knowing, it fizzles out. Tantra teaches that for the power of will to successfully flow into action, it must first be joined with the power of knowing. In other words, passion without structure often goes nowhere. And inspiration without understanding burns brightly for a moment, but then disappears. Most of us have experienced some version of this. We feel inspired to change our life, inspired to improve our relationship, to start the business, to pursue the creative path, to become healthier, calmer, more connected, but without understanding the deeper structures underneath reality, that energy dissipates. You can be inspired to run a marathon or bake a cake, but without the right knowledge, that enthusiasm has no structure to bring it into lived reality. Tantra describes the power of knowing as the organic patterning of consciousness itself, the deep structures of reality, the laws underneath how things function. Without those structures, there would be no coherence, no consistency, no form. And this applies to your life too. If you want to express your creative impulse in any area of your life, you must first understand the nature of that field. Relationships have patterns. Business has patterns. Your nervous system has patterns. The body, cats, consciousness, they all have patterns. And the more deeply you understand those structures, hey buddy, the more freely, yeah, you're okay, it's just a little bit of thunder, promise, you're good, yeah. The more freely you can move within them. This is why musicians practice scales, why dancers train foundational movement, why martial artists repeat basic forms thousands of times, because paradoxically, discipline is the path to freedom. Yeah, buddy. The beginner experiences structure as restriction, but the master experiences structure as liberation. Because eventually the form disappears into expression. The musician no longer thinks about technique. The dancer no longer thinks about movement. The body simply moves. And Tantra says the same is true spiritually. A lot of people want freedom without discipline, expression without structure, wisdom without study. But real freedom emerges through devotion to understanding, transformation with practice, not rigidity, not mechanically, but lovingly. Because eventually, the structure becomes embodied. And honestly, this is a huge part of the work that I do with people in men's tantric, men's transformational yoga, helping them understand the deeper patterns underneath their lives, why they repeat the same relationship dynamics, why they sabotage themselves, why they feel disconnected from themselves, their bodies, their partners, where they keep ending up back in the same emotional states. Because once you can actually see the patterns clearly, you begin to stop fighting yourself blindly. It's embodiment, integration, real change, not just intellectualized, but actually embodied. So if this speaks to you, there's more information in the description. So to return to the teaching, one of the most beautiful lines from this week's studies of Harish's Tantra Illuminated was this line. It is in submitting ourselves to a discipline that we become truly free and capable of real self-expression. And I think that challenges the modern mind a little, because we often associate freedom with doing whatever we want. But Tantra points towards something deeper, that unconsciousness is not freedom. Compulsion and reactivity are not freedom. Real freedom is conscious expression, taking responsibility for the responses that we choose. And conscious expression requires awareness. It requires practice, study, humility, listening, and integration. Because even on the spiritual path, Tantra says passion alone is not enough. You must equip yourself with knowledge, especially the wisdom of those who have walked the path before you. Because otherwise, the same mind that seeks freedom can unconsciously lead itself deeper into confusion. Why not avoid the pitfalls that others have learnt to not just pull themselves out of, but avoid? And this is what was deeply important for me personally, because I've realized that spirituality can't just remain conceptual if it's to be effective. Nothing in your life can remain conceptual if it's to be effective. Learning to drive a car, you can't just conceptualize, learn it from a book or from watching a video. You need to actually embody it, to do it for it to be effective. It has to become practical, embodied, lived. Not just understanding reality intellectually, but understanding how to live inside it more consciously. So maybe this week's reflection for you becomes, where in your life are you relying purely on inspiration without giving yourself to understanding? Where are you wanting freedom without structure? Where are you wanting expression without practice? And what might become possible if instead of resisting discipline, you recognized it as the very thing capable of setting you free? If you'd like to go deeper into this week's teaching, there is a full quiz linked in the description to help you integrate what we explored here today. And if you'd like the answers, you can access them for free using the link in the description. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next transmission. Cheers.